Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. People think they understand fear of the dark. They picture a kid hiding under blankets or someone who needs a nightlight. They don't understand that real nyctophobia isn't cute or something you grow out of. It's living every day with the absolute certainty that darkness equals death. My name is Katherine Hightower. My friends call me Kat, and I've been afraid of the dark for 20 years. Not uncomfortable, not nervous, terrified in a way that makes my chest tight and my hands shake just thinking about it. The kind of fear that shaped every decision I've made since I was 8 years old. My apartment looks like a Best Buy exploded. Motion sensor lights line every hallway. LED strips run along the baseboards. I have backup lights for my backup lights. My electric bill could power a small office building. The darkness can't touch me if there's nowhere for it to hide. Dr. Harrington, my therapist, calls it excessive compensatory behavior. She's been trying to help me remember what happened when I was 8, the incident that supposedly triggered all this. But every time we get close to that night, my mind goes blank. All I remember is waking up in the hospital with bandages on my arms and my parents crying. Trauma can fragment memory, Dr. Harrington explained during our last session. Your mind is preparing you for something it considers too dangerous to remember. But I don't want protection. I want answers. Because lately, the feeling that something is watching me has gotten stronger. 20 years of constant vigilance. And I can tell when the sensation changes. This isn't paranoia anymore. Something is different. It started 3 weeks ago with small things. A motion sensor light flickering in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. The feeling of being watched while walking to my car, even though I checked every shadow twice. My building's security cameras mysteriously malfunctioning on the nights I worked late. Then I found the photos. They were slipped under my apartment door sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. 12 black and white pictures of me going about my daily routine, getting coffee, walking to work, sitting at my desk, all taken with a telephoto lens from the shadows I couldn't see but I knew were there. The last photo was different. It showed me sleeping in my bed, all my lights on as always, taken from inside my apartment. Someone had been in my bedroom while I slept, close enough to touch me, and I never knew. I called the police, but Detective Rodriguez just added it to a file that was already disappointingly thin. We'll increase patrols, he promised. But his tone suggested he had heard this before. Make sure all your locks are secure. Consider staying with friends for a while. But I couldn't explain to him that friends' houses weren't safe. Anywhere without my carefully planned lighting system was a potential death trap. I'd rather face whatever was stalking me on my own turf than be helpless in someone else's darkness. The weather forecast said the storm would hit on Thursday night, December 21st, the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Of course it was. Like whatever had been toying with me was waiting for the perfect moment. I spent Thursday preparing like I was going to war. Every flashlight charged, candles stationed throughout the apartment, battery-powered LED lanterns positioned at strategic points. I even bought a camping lantern that could run for 48 hours straight. The snow started falling around 5 p.m., fat flakes that quickly turned into a proper blizzard. By 7, the power grid was struggling. Lights throughout the city flickered ominously, and the local news warned of widespread outages. I sat in my living room, surrounded by light, and tried to read. But the words kept blurring together as I listened to the wind howling outside. Every sound made me look up, checking the shadows for movement that wasn't there. At 9:47 p.m., the lights went out. Every single one. The sudden plunge into absolute darkness was like falling into ice water. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The darkness pressed against me like a living thing, and somewhere in the black void, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Laughter. Soft, childlike, and coming from inside my apartment. My hand shook as I fumbled for the camping lantern beside my chair. The button seemed impossibly small in the dark, but finally the LED bulb blazed to life, carving out a sphere of safety in the overwhelming night. The apartment looked wrong in the lantern's harsh white light. Shadows fell at strange angles, and familiar objects seemed twisted and threatening. But I was alone. I had to be alone. A wet dragging sound came from the hallway, like something being pulled across the floor. The sound moved closer, deliberate. I grabbed a flashlight with my free hand and stood up, both lights creating overlapping circles that pushed back maybe 6 feet of darkness. The apartment beyond was an ocean of black. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. "The police are on their way." A soft scratching answered me, like claws on wood. Then silence. And suddenly, horribly, I did start to remember. Fragments at first, like looking at old photographs through water. I was 8 years old, spending the night at my cousin Jennifer's house. We were supposed to be asleep, but Jennifer wanted to play hide and seek in the basement. "I dare you to hide in the coal room," Jennifer had whispered. "It's so dark, nobody will ever find you." The coal room was a small storage space off the main basement, completely black even with the light on. But I wanted to be brave. I wanted to win the game, so I climbed inside and pulled the door shut behind me. That's when I met the thing that had been living in the darkness. The scratching sound grew louder, more insistent, and I remembered that sound from 20 years ago. Claws on concrete. Something moving in a space too small for it. More memories crashed back. The feeling of something cold and wrong brushing against my face in the coal room. The sound of breathing that wasn't mine. And then pain. Sharp and sudden, as something with claws raked across my arms. I'd screamed then, screamed so loud that Jennifer's parents came running. But when they opened the coal room door, I was alone with 3 deep scratches on each arm, and a story nobody believed about something living in the dark.
"Hello, Sarah. Did you miss me?"
The voice seemed to come from all around me, echoing through the apartment like it was being spoken directly into my mind. It was soft, almost childlike, but with an edge that made my skin crawl.
"They said you imagined me,"
the voice continued, amused.
"Said trauma could make children see things that weren't there. But you knew better, didn't you, Sarah?"
I backed away toward the kitchen, keeping both lights trained on the hallway. "What do you want?" The only answer was a soft thud, like something heavy dropping to the floor. Then the wet dragging resumed, closer now. Something moved, just to the edge of my light's reach. Not quite human, but not animal either. I caught a glimpse of pale skin stretched too tight over a frame that bent in places where bones shouldn't bend. A low hissing filled the air, like steam escaping from a radiator, but with an organic wetness that made my skin crawl. The camping lantern flickered, The battery indicator showed full charge, but the light dimmed for just a second, long enough for me to see something scuttle across the floor toward me. I ran for the bedroom, slamming the door behind me and grabbing the battery-powered lantern I'd stationed on my nightstand. But even with both lights, the darkness seemed thicker in here, more aggressive, like it was actively pushing against the light instead of just filling the empty space. Something scraped against the bedroom door. Long, deliberate scratches in the wood. The doorknob turned slowly. I hadn't locked it. In my panic, I'd forgotten to lock it. The door swung open, revealing nothing but hallway darkness, but I could feel something there, just beyond the threshold, watching me with eyes I couldn't see. The hissing grew louder, accompanied by a wet clicking sound, like someone trying to speak with a mouth full of water. As if summoned by its words, my flashlight began to dim. The beam turned yellow, then orange, then died completely. Now I only had the lantern, and its light seemed smaller than before, less able to hold back the darkness that pressed in from all sides. I pressed myself against the wall, lantern clutched to my chest. "What are you?"
"I'm what lives in the places where light can't reach. I'm what hides in the gaps between seconds, in the space behind your eyelids when you blink. Your kind gave me names once. Boogeyman, Shadow Person, the thing under the bed. But I'm older than your words, Sarah. I was here before your species learned to make fire." Something touched my foot. I looked down and saw pale fingers, impossibly long, stretching across the floor from the darkest corner of the room. As I watched, more fingers emerged from the shadows, dozens of them, all reaching for me. I scrambled onto the bed, holding the lantern high. The extra height gave me maybe 2 more feet of visible space, but I could see the fingers now covered the entire floor like some grotesque carpet. A sound filled the room then, something between a growl and a sob, emanating from everywhere at once. It was the sound of something that had been waiting, something that was finally close enough to feed. The lantern flickered again, and this time I saw it clearly when the light dimmed. It stood in the doorway, roughly human-shaped, but wrong in every detail. Its skin was the color of old paper, stretched so tight I could see the outline of bones underneath. Its arms were long, hanging almost to the floor, ending in those reaching fingers. But the worst part was its face. It had no eyes, just smooth skin where eyes should be. But somehow, I knew it was looking at me. Its mouth was wide and full of teeth, and from it came that wet clicking sound, as if it were trying to speak, but couldn't quite manage it. The thing's mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, and a sound emerged that was part scream, part hunger, and entirely inhuman. The lantern flickered a 3rd time, and when it steadied, the thing was standing right beside my bed. It reached for the lantern with one impossibly long arm, and I could hear its joints creaking like old wood as it moved. I pulled back, but there was nowhere to go. My back was already against the wall, and the bed was surrounded by those terrible fingers. That's when I remembered my phone. Not for calling help, the power outage had killed the cell towers, but for its flashlight function. My hand shook as I fumbled for it, and the thing watched me struggle. But when my phone's LED flashed on, something unexpected happened. The thing recoiled, actually took a step backward, and for the first time, its horrible clicking stopped. I looked at my phone and understood.
It wasn't just the light that was affecting it. It was the screen itself, glowing with information, pictures of my family, text messages from my friends, video clips I'd saved, all the connections to other people, other lives, other sources of light in the world. The thing lived in isolation, in the empty spaces where nothing human touched. But my phone was a beacon of human connection, even without cellular service. It contained proof that I wasn't alone, that somewhere beyond this apartment, people cared about me. I held the phone up like a shield, and the thing actually stumbled backward, making a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "You know what I just remembered?" I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I wasn't alone in that coal room 20 years ago. The thing tilted its eyeless head, and the clicking resumed, faster now, more agitated. Jennifer was there too. She came looking for me when I screamed. She opened the door. She let in the light. She saved me. I stood up on the bed, holding both the lantern and the phone. I was never alone, and I'm not alone now. I thought about Dr. Harrington, who'd spent months helping me understand my fear, about Detective Rodriguez, who'd taken my reports seriously, even when they sounded paranoid, about my parents, who'd never once told me to just get over it, about every person who'd helped me build a life despite my terror. The thing's form wavered, becoming less solid. A high keening sound escaped its throat, like air being forced through a broken whistle. "Maybe that's why you could never finish what you started," I said, because I was never truly alone. The apartment around us suddenly felt different, less oppressive. And then, impossibly, I heard something that made my heart leap. The electrical hum of power returning. One by one, my lights began to flicker back to life. The LED strips along the baseboards, the motion sensors in the hallway, every carefully planned bulb and fixture blazing back into existence. The thing shrieked and began to dissolve at the edges where the light touched it. When the last shadow burned away and the final echo of that inhuman shriek faded, I was alone in my brilliantly lit apartment. The storm was still raging outside, but the power held steady. My phone buzzed with a text message as the cell towers came back online. It was from Dr. Harrington. "Thinking of you during the storm. Remember, you're stronger than your fears. Call if you need anything." I smiled and typed back, "I'm okay. I think I'm finally ready to remember everything." Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the dark. Not of the memories, not of the thing that had hunted me for 20 years. I'd learned something that night that no amount of therapy had been able to teach me. Light isn't just about bulbs and batteries. It's about connection. It's about the people who refuse to let you face the darkness alone. I kept every light in the apartment on for the rest of the night. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to. Because the light wasn't just keeping the darkness out anymore. It was inviting everything good in. The next morning, I called Detective Rodriguez and told him the case was closed. He didn't ask questions, just said he was glad I was safe. Then I called Dr. Harrington and scheduled an appointment. It was time to remember everything, to face the complete truth of what had happened when I was 8. But first, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I walked over to my living room light switch and turned it off. Just for a moment, just to prove I could. The morning sunlight streaming through the windows was enough to keep the shadows soft and harmless. And in that gentle darkness, for the first time since I was a child, I felt truly safe. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's Crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.